Hi there. In this screencast, I'm going to take a quick look at how we can build a user interface using HTML. I'll add some programming functionality later on so we can actually capture the data and then display it back to a user or store it for later, which will be future videos. So this video will just deal with mostly just the HTML and the CSS, and I'll do my best to address some of the items in the glossary from the readings for this course. So I'm going to start my document in a plain text editor, again one of those items that's mentioned in the glossary, and then I'll switch to another application basically to show you that you can use a plain text editor, but there's benefits to using an IDE, which is an integrated development environment. And the one I'll use is very, very simple. It's not a full-blown IDE. It's just an application called Brackets, which is a free download, which works with Mac or PC. I'm using Windows 7, so I'll be using Notepad to start with, and then I'll switch over to Brackets. The Mac counterpart of Notepad is TextEdit, and most operating systems come with at least a text editor. You need to be able to manipulate the basically the operating system using a text-based system as well as a graphic user interface. So we can interact with Windows using Notepad, and same thing with Mac using Notepad, or of course using a mouse and a pointer. If I have a chance, I'll quickly show you some of the scripts that we can create to manipulate the operating system as well. So again, I'm starting with Notepad, so I'll just fire it up. I'm just clicking on my start menu, and then I have Notepad right in the start menu. You can actually click in your run field. Let me just, I can't bring that up into the window. I'm keeping a small window to reduce the file size of this video, but let me just quickly show you. So if you just go in the run field or search field in Windows and just type in Notepad and press enter, it'll fire it up. I've got a shortcut in my start menu. So there's Notepad. Let me just bring it into view here. So this is a plain text editor. What that means is there's no additional code added to what we create in this editor. Everything you see here is in ASCII text, which is another coding language on its own. Basically each character is 8 bits, 1 byte. So I'm going to create the very minimum tags you need for an HTML document in this to start with. So it's HTML. Now this is known as an HTML tag. This is the starting tag. So we generally have a starting tag that wraps around an element. In this situation, the element will be the entire document. And then we have a closing tag. So this is the starting tag. So for every starting tag, we generally, and I say generally because we sometimes we have standalone tags as well, which you'll see when I create the form to grab the user information. Now the closing tag is slash. We call that it's a forward slash, but you can just call that slash. You can call it backslash backslash, but a forward slash is just called slash. That's not in the glossary. So there's the start of my document and the close of my document. Now, in HTML, we also have a head area. This is not a header, this is a head. And this is where we place information. You can place meta information. So meta means information about the document or information about information. One of the bits of information is title. Now the title won't be seen in the, and again I'm going to close this, will not be seen in the body of the document. Instead it'll be shown on the document tab. So when I view this in a browser, you'll see it in the document tab. So I'm going to call this my user form or something like that. So I'm going to grab some data. Whoops, I forgot my E here. I'm going to grab some data from a user and display it back to them. It's going to be a very simple application, but it is going to be an application. We're not going to actually store the information in a database quite yet. It'll just be stored in variables and then displayed back. And I'll just explain all of that stuff as we go. So just before I continue on here, I'm just going to show you a little bit about this code. So presently we have HTML, and then at the very end of the document, the HTML closes. Inside, and we can say inside means nested. Nested inside, we have a head. Head is inside of the document. So we have head, and then that closes right before the close of the HTML. So both of those tags are nested inside of HTML. And then we have the title inside of the head. Now that may seem obvious, but I've seen people do this, which is incorrect. I'm just going to cut this, Control X, and paste it below my head. So that is incorrect. An incorrect arrangement of tags. These tags are not nested. However, you'll see that it probably works, but it's best not to tempt fate. Some things will work, but they're not correct. And what basically means is it may work in one browser or one environment, but not in another. So you'll get unexpected results with things that work that aren't correct. Now, one last thing that we need to display the contents of this document to the user is the body. So anything in the body is available for the user. So again, these are a bunch of tags. You can find a list of all of the tags on the World Wide Web Consortium. So that's a good point. There's, for every coding language, there's the body that basically arranges that language for future versions and whatnot, all of the people who work on it together and whatnot. For HTML and CSS, it's all controlled by the World Wide Web Consortium, W3C. They also are in charge of maintaining JavaScript and deciding on the rules for that language as well. So there's a whole bunch of very smart people that make decisions about the future of these languages and whatnot. All right, so we've got a body. I'm just going to throw something in the body so we can actually take a look at basically the user view of this. Right now we're in the code view. So there's two views generally for every application, the code view and what the user sees. So I'm just going to put something in another tag. I'll just throw it in, usually you have a heading 1. Now, you can consider this kind of like a machine-readable title for the page. Now this will be the human-readable title for the page, and I'll say my user form instead of something like hello world. All right, so we've got a bit of a document here. So let's quickly save this, and then we'll view it in the browser. So again, we're looking at the code view. In order to view this, HTML is understood by or processed by the browser. So I'm just going to quickly file, save this. Now, I had a question in the discussion for the previous week, and somebody was asking, how do we know what coding language is used for what application? Now, here's where I'll show you where you can figure a little bit of that out. So I'm going to go File, Save, and I'm just going to throw this on my desktop so it's easy to find. You can put it wherever you put your files in. How programming works. I'll just put it in a folder called How Programming Works. Now, let me just show you the naming convention here I'm going to use. So I'm going to choose how-programming-works. So basically you want to avoid spaces, and you want to avoid esoteric characters like quotes, dollar signs, question marks, ampersand, stuff like that. So, and no spaces, because spaces in programming, when you're saving stuff to the web, sometimes links get broken if you put spaces in. So always avoid spaces. Now, I'm not using underscores here because if this becomes a link displayed on a website, the underscores will be hidden by the underline of the link. The blue underline will hide the underscores. So I always use dashes to make it more obvious that there's no spaces here. Basically, if we have an underline that hides an underscore, it may look like the file name has spaces, and if somebody goes and types it again, it'll be an incorrect version of that file name or sorry, I should say folder name. So I'm going to press enter to finish off this file name. I'm going to press enter one more time, and that'll put me inside of this folder. And then I'm going to call this index.html. And I'll talk a bit about index if I have a chance, but basically it's the default file that the browser will open when you refer to a folder name. So I don't have to, when I create a link to this document, I don't have to say how programming works / index.html. I just can say how programming works. The browser will find index.html. Now if I had called this document tomato, the browser wouldn't find it. It wouldn't just use any old index file name and open up that if it couldn't find index. You'd have to specify how programming works / tomato.html. So with index.html, you don't have to specify the file name. It's the default file. And that works in a lot of operating systems as well. So if you go to a folder and you have something called index, depending on what programming language you're using. Now, again, this is where I answer that question from the discussion. Frequently, the file suffix will give you an indication about what programming language is being used in this document. So this is HTML. Now within HTML we can use CSS and PHP and JavaScript as well, and you'll see how you can identify that code within the document as well. So I'll choose save. Now in order to view this, I just have to drag that file into my browser. So I'm just going to quickly bring up a browser here. So I'm just going to double click on that folder so you can see it in this window here. So I double clicked on how programming works on my desktop. That's the folder here. Just resizing this so we can reuse it at this size later on. Now you'll notice that it's got an icon here. So since I typed in .html, the operating system has HTML files associated with my browser, Chrome. So I can just simply double click on it. Now, it's opened in another browser. I wanted it to open in this particular browser window because it has none of my shortcuts and whatnot. So I'm just going to drag it. So another way of doing this is to drag onto the document window. And there's basically my web page so far. And again, HTML is not a programming language, but it is a coding language. Not the appearance, but the structure. There's something else called CSS which allows us to affect the appearance of this. So that's basically creating an HTML document really quick. We're already at 13 minutes by my timer. So I'll go ahead and upload this video, and then I'll move on to the next one, so where we can look at CSS and some forms that we can then interact with a full-blown object-oriented programming language, which is JavaScript. Thanks so much for watching.